in the KPG exams. KPG, by the way, for those that don't know, is an acronym for the national exams, Matthews. The world of the texts has a special concern for the environment, health, and social issues. Social participants inhabiting in the texts are world citizens. They are the text's main actors, censors, sayers, and possessors in material, mental, verbal, and possessive processes. The human actants who dominate the text are socially active citizens, activists, ecotourists. Okay? The world constructed, right? Not that the world is like this. Text participants are experts, they're authorial figures, and that was something very surprising. In relation to the reader, the writer is positioned as a knower, someone who has better access to the truth and knows what must be done. The reader appears to be in need of valid information, advice, and guidance. This has taken very, very detailed transitivity and mood analysis that has been done by Amalia. I have summarized these findings a little more extensively with the linguistic analysis, and they're in these handouts that are here. Anyone interested can pick them up. And of course, when her thesis is completed, she's just making the revisions now and will be defending it soon. We will publish it as others that are related to tests in the Research Center for English Language Teaching at the University of Athens. Now, international language testing in the languages of Europe. ILT offers services and is serviced by primarily the big languages, leaving the smaller ones unattended. And here I want to make a parenthesis and say that I am a person that has been very heavily involved in testing recently. My whole life has been about developing this testing system in Greece. But before, if somebody asked me, and most of you who have been involved in testing have heard a lot of people say that the world is divided in two. The world of education. Educators and testers. Okay. If I were to place myself in this sort of arbitrary division, I would have placed myself on the side of educators rather than testers. However, testing is extremely important, and it has, as many people have said, very important social impacts. And I want to tell you why I became involved in this testing system. First of all, what was interesting is that in Greece, in which it's a testing, not just loving. I mean, it's a culture that adores tests, and particularly tests that lead to certificates. Okay, for a whole lot of reasons. I was talking about it with Maria this morning. Why this is so in Greece? It doesn't matter right now, but it is true that everybody needs a certificate, and therefore, also as Vanda Papafilippou was saying in her presentation, it has a very, very big impact, and it shapes almost, I'm not sure I would call it subjectivity, but in any case, it shapes the way that we think about education and testing and so on and so forth. But because examinations are actually industries that are interested also in profit, basically it is the big languages that are tested, and therefore, even though in Greece, someone receives quite a bit of credit in order to get a position as a public servant, and they receive credit for their knowledge of a foreign language. The only credits they could get were in particular languages and not in others, merely because there were no examination suits, to actually certify their competence in that particular language, but which they had to produce in order to get credit for it. Therefore, recently we've had a very big influx of language richness in Greece with economic immigrants. And therefore, for example, there are a lot of people that have brought Russian with them, okay? Or that have brought other types of languages which are very important for the Greek market, economy, and so on and so forth. But they cannot really produce any kind of paper that would legitimate that knowledge. Therefore, my concern was to create some kind of way in which languages could be certified, but also to be certified in a similar manner. Because another thing that international language tests have is that they're an international language test for one language. Okay? Whereas language testing systems that we will see that are local, and therefore they evolve out of the need of the social needs, it can be the same examination battery for a lot of languages, treating the various languages that it involves as equal partners in that system, which makes it something quite different. This is what I was saying before. If people cannot be certified for their proficiency in language X, they have no proof, which is usually required. ILT, as a monolingual and monocultural enterprise, basically endorses the idea that effective communication is monolingual. Proficient users of a language do not use hybrid forms, mixed languages, or codes, whereas in reality, this is what we do. And I use hybrid in a positive sense. In some ways, it's a false friend for Greek, to hybridion, which can have a negative concept, but I'm using it in theoretically a positive term. Tests are, and this is an endorsement, and should continue to be acultural. There's danger in having a cultural, to be culturally loaded. Yet, can any language use, any text, can it really be acultural? Okay, and that's a question. Testing and multilingualism. International tests, the most popular ones that we know, are marketed by the big language testing industries, which are monolingual projects with vested interest to remain so because of the profit. Those that classroom language tests are taught how to make as inclusive monolingual instruments. In other words, there's backwash effect from these into the language, into the classroom language tests, and that's what Ilana was talking about yesterday. But I think that there can be a very distinct separation. Both are intended to measure test takers' language competence or performance in a single language. Okay? The reasons for monolingualism is that language exams and tests are developed to assess almost exclusively linguistic competence. It's very, very difficult to measure other kinds of communicative competence objectively in such a test, and it needs to be objective. There needs, as Jan said, these tests need to be reliable and valid. They cannot just be based on subjective. Linguistic competence is measured against the ideal native speaker, and this is due to the fact that language teaching is still largely built around the native speaker competence paradigm. Linguistic competence is measured objectively more easily. Shifting attention from monolingual to multilingual paradigms, and I'm going to refer to the fact that the European Commission at this point has it as its most major project, a shift towards multilingualism, and a lot of projects are being funded and created by the European Commission to go towards a more multilingual paradigm within the European Union. as I said before, I don't believe that the CEF itself is a monolingual instrument. In fact, I quote from the CEF here that the aim of language education should be refinedly modified. It should no longer be seen as simply to achieve mastery of 1 or 2 or even 3 languages, and so on and so forth. However, the way that it is being used very frequently is to build monolingual testing systems and so on. According to the CEF, the implications of the shift from mono to multi have not been worked out, and they have most certainly not been translated into action. And that's why Lana was asking us yesterday to think towards what can we do to make. I'm not sure to what extent large international tests can do it for different reasons, but at least classroom testing and so on and so forth. In fact, the CEF itself has chiefly been used so far, as I said, for the validation of the endorsement of tests monolingual, and in practice, it has rarely served as a tool for the promotion of multilingualism, but that is not the CEF itself. The European language teaching and testing industry is a big industry, and it serves the commodities and so on and so forth that we've discussed. Basically, large international language tests do not involve adjustments to the cultural, linguistic,